Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 776. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. We are still on our annual holiday, and we'll be back with new programs on October 22nd. This week in the SPaMCAST 776 from our archives, we feature SPaMCAST 641, the Agile Coaching Code of Ethics, a conversation with Hastie and Craig Smith. The show was originally aired on March 7th, 2021. I still think the ethics initiative is one of the most important things I've been involved with professionally. Enjoy the conversation. By the way, link in the show notes to www.agilealliance.org/Agile Coaching Ethics if you want to read them, and I think you should because it is incredibly important. Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 635. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Cue the music. Happy birthday to the Software Process and Measurement Cast. Today, we begin year 15 with a visit from Johanna Rothman. Johanna has been here a number of times. I really love talking with Johanna. Today, we talked about her three new books. Practical Ways to Manage Yourself, Modern Management Made Easy, Book 1. Practical Ways to Lead and Serve Others, Modern Management Made Easy, Book 2. Practical Ways to Lead an Innovative Organization, Modern Management Made Easy, Book 3. We, of course, covered a ton of more ground. For example, about 2/3 of the way through, we talked about why the word experiment is a dirty word in most organizations. This is a longer interview. But when I grow up, I really want to be like Johanna. I'm serious. Johanna Rothman, known as the Pragmatic Manager, offers frank advice to your tough problems. She helps leaders and teams do reasonable things that work. Equipped with that knowledge, they can decide how to adapt their product development. With her trademark practicality and humor, Johanna is the author of 18 books about many aspects of product development. Her most recent books are the Modern Management Made Easy series. We talked about that on this podcast. From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams with Mark Kilby. We actually had both Mark and Johanna on the podcast. It was a phenomenal interview. And Create Your Successful Agile Project. Collaborate, measure, estimate, deliver. See all of our books, blog, and other resources at jrrothman.com and createadaptablelife.com. Links in the show notes. Are you ready to talk practical ways to manage yourself, others, and innovative organizations? It's time for the interview. Johanna Rothman, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thank you, Tom. I am delighted to be here.
Johanna, this is... You've been on any number of times now, and it is always one of those great moments and things getting ready, prepping for it from my point of view. I learn a lot, and I learn a lot just from the conversation. So I'm looking forward to, in essence, this will run as the first show of the 15th year of the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Wow.
Scary.
Yeah.
Today, I want to talk about the 3 new books that you've recently published, and they're published right now on LeanPub.
Actually, they're also published everywhere in print and ebook. I think that the libraries cannot yet order the print books because I'm having a little trouble with Ingram Spark, but I suspect that this coming week, this first week, as this airs, I will fix those problems because people will be back in the virtual office, and then people can buy them everywhere and in ebook and print.
Super.
Yeah.
Libraries. I guess before we dive into the books, a little bit of inside pool. How much throughput do you get? I mean, how many libraries actually pick up books of this genre?
Oh, I don't think very many. If I had published with a publisher that like Simon & Schuster or a famous publisher and they decided to give these books, quote, the bestseller treatment, end of quote, maybe the library would pick up one or two. But the interesting thing about making the books available to libraries is that people can ask for them. They can ask for the ebook. They can ask for the print book. The library can buy the books, and then we're fine. So I am not so, it's not so much that I expect people to ask for these books, but I hope that they ask for the books.
Yeah.
And therefore, because you and I are recording this, and we before our conversation started recording, we talked about our various bookshelves, and you could tell mine are real because mine are sideways and kind of tilting, and yours are all shelved properly. Yeah, I am not that neat. And not everybody is like us, who either has the will or the means to buy all the books that we want to read. Some people actually go to the library like I used to as a kid. So, and I would take out as many books as they would let me take out every week. I find that some people might want to try out a book at the library and then possibly buy the audio or the ebook or the print book, which is fine with me.
Well, I mean, and technical books are generally not the dime a dozen. They're not the dime paperback, so to speak. They do have a price tag. Well, let's dive in. So 3 books: Practical Ways to Manage Yourself, Practical Ways to Lead and Serve. I like the parentheses, manage others in there. Practical Ways to Lead an Innovative Organization. 3 books all at once. Is this sort of an opus? What's the idea of doing this broad of a sweep of books? I mean, it's obviously all about leadership and management, but it's anywhere from bottom of the hierarchy, your individual self, all the way to something significantly larger.
So it turns out that I explained this in the introduction to each of the books. I had written a management myth every month for 36 months. I thought, quote, all I could do was to collect all the myths. It would be one book, 36,000 words, maybe 40,000 words. It would be thin enough for managers to pick up. They would read the myths. They would be happy. Yeah. I did not realize the project I was creating. So I did a first pass on organizing all the myths. And then I thought, I really need an introduction to each myth. I got to tell people what to do, right? If I say you must admit when you need help, then where do people start, right? That's in managing yourself. Mm-hmm. Or I must admit when I'm wrong. How do you tell people where to start there? You don't just give them the myth, drop it in their lap like it's a puppy and say, here, enjoy this puppy. No, or a cat if you're a cat person, right? Fine, whatever. Or a book, like if you're a book people like we are. But I needed to somehow give people options so they could say, I could do this thing. I could do maybe that thing. This thing that she's suggesting, she is nuts. She is off the wall. I don't see how this could possibly work. I'm not doing that. So once I started realizing I needed a little introduction and I needed options, the books grew. And then I thought, if I write a 500-page book, that's not going to work either. What might people look for now? And it turns out that if you think about managing yourself, I think about that for first level new managers, and I think about it for senior managers, because a lot of people think senior managers have to have all the answers, that they must do this by themselves, that they must never admit when they don't know, that they must interfere with the work that their teams are doing. And you see this in senior managers, right? So the senior managers are part of a senior leadership team, and they have their fingers into what the directors are doing. And then the directors don't really have a director level team, which is an issue I address in book 3, but they have their fingers in the first level managers, and the first level managers don't have a management team, but they have their fingers in the code or the test or the UI or whatever it is. And that's when I said, while I might think of this as kind of first level managers, and then the lead and serve others as second level or more experienced managers, and the innovative organization for the third, but the senior leadership actually works at all levels.
Yeah, I didn't, as I read through them, I could see that thread, but I didn't see it that brightly, right? So I didn't see it as, oh, this is a junior, or this is intermediate, and this is sort of an advanced or senior leader kind of thing. It really did feel like it was valuable at all levels. One of the central themes that I took out of this was that in reality, what we do and the people that we work with, that this is really all about people. And if that's true, then why do so many people try to then, rather than focus on people and dealing with these kind of people issues, why do they just then go off and say, well, we'll just, instead of doing that, we'll do a framework, or we'll use tools instead, and that will take care of the people issues?
I suspect that many managers got the same kind of training about management that I got. I was a terrific individual contributor, focus on the individual. I was a terrific project and program manager, focus on the delivery I needed to make for the organization. And I got zero training in management, which is why Esther and I wrote Behind Closed Doors, Secrets of Great Management all those years ago. And I still see that so many managers got promoted because they were excellent technical people. And
it's one of the myths.
Yeah, one of the many myths. And I will freely admit, I did not get into software because I loved people. I got into software because I loved solving problems with computers. I totally enjoyed it. And I remained in software because I really liked making products that people could use that used computers. And a lot of us in our field are not in software or any high-tech field because we really love people. So I would not say I really love people in that sense, but I respect everybody's contributions. And I want to build a respectful relationship with people. And that part of, quote, loving, end of quote, loving people, that the respect part really matters to me. And I have found that when I respect the people I work with, I get a whole lot more done.
The whole idea of respect, there are any number of things that are required for respect to exist in an organization. One of them is sort of a safe environment. One of the topics that you tackle is this whole idea of safety and having a safe environment. Would you suggest that having a safe environment is most important for managing yourself, or is it as important when you're managing and leading an innovative organization?
So when I think about safety, I think about the ability to disagree with people respectfully, the ability to make mistakes, and the ability to run experiments. And if we do not have at least those three, I don't see how we can have psychological safety. So if I think about that, I happen to run experiments all the time with myself. I am possibly incapable of following even my own process more than 1 or 2 times. I'm always experimenting. Can I make this better? What does better mean? Yeah. This business of following a process, I am incapable of it. And this is why I don't really recommend strict processes and frameworks, but guidelines and constraints. And then if we can never admit that we're wrong, How do we allow for other people to admit when they are wrong and improve the process as we go, right? I think of the whole business of process as a continual base of improvement. This is why I really like what you ask on the SPaMCAST every single week. If process improvement is a journey, why do people always ask when we're done or when we get there? Whatever. You say that much more nicely than I said. So it's all about how can we include the idea of experimenting and learning fast, which might include a little bit of stubbing our toes, quote, failing, and to quote, certainly making mistakes, and then go from there. So I see psychological safety as necessary. I need to have enough resilience in myself to be able to make a mistake and say, oh, fine, I did that. Not such a good idea.
And
Here's
not do
what
it
I'm
again.
going to do next. Yeah, and not do it again. Yeah. And I think that's how we do our best work.
I think that you are correct. One of the more striking phrases, and it caught me, might have been, at least when I was reading this on the Kindle, it might have been 3 or 4 Kindle pages into the first book. You use the line, it's time for real modern management. What is real modern management versus, is that like fake modern management?
So I think we have a lot of fake modern management. Anybody who says we return value to the shareholders as our mission for the company, that's totally false management. That's parroting a phrase from one of the quote modern end of quote management thinkers in the 70s or 80s, that the purpose of the organization was to return value to the stakeholders. What nonsense. What idiocy. You don't have an organization unless you have satisfied customers. How do you get satisfied customers? By creating products that people really love to use. How do you create those products that people really love to use? You create an environment where a diverse set of people can actually collaborate together to create something that they are proud of. Way back in the 70s or 80s, and maybe we still do this today, a lot of us signed our products. Our customers knew who worked on those products. And there are certain apps that you can download now where you can see the product development team was, and it lists all these people. Those people are proud of their products. I really like to think about, and I'm certainly proud of my books. My name is all over my books, as it should be. So how do we create an environment where people can really be proud of the work that they do?
Another one of the myths that you explore in these 3 books is the idea of the player coach. And you sort of alluded to it a little while ago when we were talking about basically the 3 chunks. The whole idea of a player coach, that's a wonderful idea. We should all be doing that, right? Does that work? Obviously not. Why is that such a pernicious myth that arguably is, I can point at a dozen people playing that role today.
I'm surprised it's only a dozen.
Well, I only know a dozen people.
Right. So I think that the middle and more senior managers think, can't people manage and do technical work at the same time? Right? It's this notion of, shouldn't they be able to do this? And it can't be that hard. What I have found is that if I make things easy, if I describe things easily, too many people think that the work is easy to do. And I'm pretty sure I said several times in these books, easy to describe, hard to implement. And that's been my guiding light for all the writing I do. I really want to make sure I describe things in a way that people can understand. And really great technical people and really great first-line managers do describe things in ways other people can understand. And because it's simple to hear or understandable to hear, that means the more senior managers think that the work is easy to do. Simple to describe is not at all simple to do. And I think that that's one of our big failings as managers.
Do you think that this player-coach scenario is also sort of covariant and related to the idea that you promote, the best manager is the person who's the best technical person? And obviously, as they step away from being the best technical person to be a leader, that's a hard thing to give up. So they also think that they can play the role also.
So I think that one of the biggest problems I had, I alternated between technical contributor and manager several times before I decided I wanted to really make my mark in management. That was, I wanted to be a manager. I was done bouncing between contributor and manager. And what I realized is a lot of my ego was totally connected with my ability to create value at the product level. And what we see in managers, great managers, don't create value at the product level directly. They help other people coach each other. They might offer coaching to people, if that makes sense. They help each other learn how to give and offer feedback to each other, right? How can we receive and offer feedback? How can we create the environment that other people need so they create great products? It's that environment creation piece that is so hard. And that's the piece nobody talks about. So, well, I don't think enough people. Let me say that a little bit better. See, I was wrong. Very few people talk about creating an environment where other people can do their best work. And that's, if all managers said, my job today is to create an environment where other people can do their best work, they would already start from a really good place.
Is that fear that stops them from doing that? I mean, for those of us who have lived through economic cycles more than once, we've seen that, especially that frontline or middle management layer, flex and get bigger and smaller, get bigger and smaller. Sometimes you look at that and you go, your job is to create an environment. But by creating an environment, it's easier to perceive them as overhead and a quote unquote burden, a tax on the people doing the work, and therefore at risk. We're probably about to go into one of those cycles where things like process improvement become very important again, so that we improve. And I'll use a dirty word, productivity, right? And use that in the classic economic sense versus some of the other more evil senses. Will there be more fear that, hey, I can't help everybody. I need to prove my value again?
Yeah, you're right. It's partially fear. And I think that it's fear born out of good experience. There are fewer and fewer more senior management jobs at any given company, right? A company can grow only so much before it either splits off divisions or splits off a company or something. And if you are one of those people who really wants, that you have healthcare, that you have some kind of company contribution to your retirement, or whatever other perks and bonuses you might get from working in a large company. It gets very scary the more competent you make other people, right? That you support other people. Because can your boss figure out what you do? And this is why I truly recommend that people keep a list of their accomplishments and say, boss, here's what I did. Now, I do find that a lot of organizations have a very narrow band of what they can give for bonuses, for extra money. I mean, we're talking about 1 to 3%. We rarely talk about more than 3%. We rarely talk about under 1%. So if you're talking about such small percentages for any given level in the organization, I think it's really important to say what really matters to you. How can you get that without pushing on the people who do the work, without taking credit for the people who do the work? There has to be another way for you to get credit for what you do for creating that environment without discounting the work of other people.
You quote Drucker in, I think it's the second book, and you may have quoted him a number of other times, but the one that struck me was when you were talking about the role of management as balancing the intermediate and the long-term future, and obviously creating teams. So those two things. How does your philosophy, as it links through these three books, differ or support Drucker's view of what management is all about?
So in the third book, I said that the core competence of any organization is innovation, right? So for me, the whole idea of Drucker, I have yet to find anything I disagree with Drucker. His use of man in all of his books, he was a product of his times. So if he had met me, he would have said people, or men and women. I mean, let's just face it. I would have been in his face. But I think that Drucker really has some very important points to make. This business of a harmonic whole for organizations, for managers to create that harmonic whole and to balance the short term and the long term. If you only think about the short term, you don't understand how you might have technical debt that prevents you from actually finishing projects faster. Now, I don't care if you work in a project-based organization or a product-based organization. Everyone needs to finish whatever they're working on now so they can take more work, because the idea of this productivity, in the economic sense, if we have a constant stream of valuable work outside the organization that our customers can use, we get to do other things. Some of those other things take a long time. We need to fund them at some level so that we continue to do them so we are ready for when the market is ready. Some of those things we need to do now. We need to ship. We need to just get them out the door. And some of those things we need to decide between. How much of our work is going to be in the same old? How much of our work is going to be in the possibly transformative space? If we are not paying attention to all of our debt that we owe ourselves from shortcuts that we took before, right? Technical debt in terms of we decided to shortcut the tests and the build time for this product because we wanted to get it out the door fast. And that was 15 years ago. Right? And so, our management debt by not creating an environment for people, and our more senior management debt by not choosing the work for the organization and the project portfolio. The more we incur all this debt, the more short-term our thinking is, which does not allow us to succeed for the longer term.
Okay, so that joins it all up. As I was mentioning before we went on the air, yesterday I took a risk and had a physically distanced beer with a friend. And in terms of describing the books, I think the comment was that reading the three of them together left, I think, both of us feeling that this was sort of a whole joined up idea of, the flow went through as a whole joined up idea in terms of how, and I think we use the term leadership, and And I would argue that, perhaps management leadership could be used sort of synonymously there. But was that the intent of putting all of these myths together?
Yes, because I don't see how you can separate management from leadership or leadership from management. Leadership without management means you have no execution. And management without leadership says you do this or else. Right? There's no vision. So you need a vision. You need this overarching goal. You need to have excellent execution. And that does not mean you cannot make a mistake. You can, but as long as you can recover from it. So it's all about the recovery and then the resilience of it. So that, yes, to me, these books are, if I could have published them all together and thought that anybody would read them, I would have. But I did not think that anybody would read them if they were all one 500 or 600 page book. And I wanted people to read them.
I understand. I actually think having them in three separate, and having been through them once, almost once now, I think I did admit that I am only about 60% of the way through the third book reading it. I have perused it and things like that, but reading is a little different than just skimming through something. The idea of stepping and stopping the thirds, I think, allowed some degree of reflection and sort of a pause and a deep breath and thought. And I think that's what you get from reading books versus, reading blogs or reading the short fiction or, short takes kind of thing. There is a much more, there's more meat there, and it more deeply makes you dive into what you're doing. If you were to boil this down to a single punchline, and obviously I don't know that that's what we want people to do, what would that single punchline be?
So I need 3 punchlines. Sorry.
Fine.
But I will give you a single punchline for each of the books. So for the first book, it's really about thinking, how do I, as a leader, move from expert to coach, right? How can I value my expertise and yet move it to coaching the people I serve and possibly coaching myself so I manage my fear? So it's all about moving from expert to coach. The second book is all about moving from an individual focus to a team-based focus. We do so much in our organizations focus on the individual. How can I move from that individual focus to a team-based focus while I serve the team? And then the third book is about moving from change management to embracing and managing for change. And that's where the idea of creating management teams and how can we have more fast experiments? How can we look for opportunities to learn and experiment? All inside of our vision, right? We have this overarching vision, this overarching goal. How can we embrace change and look to serve that overarching goal while we support our people, while we manage ourselves?
Do you think the word experiment is still a hard word to use in normal corporate organizations?
Oh, yes. I am, I'm in the middle of teaching a product owner workshop right now for a lovely organization who thinks that they need to understand what the 80% and 90% confidence levels for 18 months out are. Yeah, I mean, I understand why they want this. I think that asking the question, when can we see this feature set in the product, is often a good question. But 18 months out, that kind of predictability, nobody has that kind of predictability. And well, certainly not the way they're using their stories. They don't have one-day stories. They have stories or features that take 2 months at a time. So their lack of predictability makes what the managers want impossible to give them. So I'm working with them on how do we get what we want differently? How do the teams offer us different views into what they're doing? But this notion of experimentation and learning, they're really having trouble with that. Because for so long, experimentation has been bad because they would fail. Mm-hmm. And instead, I'd like to reframe experimentation as learning. And the faster I can learn, if I can learn something in one day, that's much, much better than anything else. This whole business of experimentation and learning versus failure, yeah, that's very fraught right now. Well, and it probably has been for a long time in organizations.
Johanna, this has, as always, been marvelous. If you woke up tomorrow morning, you were handed a magic wand, a cup of coffee, and were given the power to change any 2 things that affect how work was done, what would those 2 things be and why?
So the first one is to focus on flow efficiency, what a team can do, not what an individual can do by him or herself. Right. So that whole notion of how do we work as teams certainly at the product level or the support level, any of the making level. And then the second thing is flow efficiency for managers. That we talk about senior leadership teams and we talk about teams doing the work. We don't talk about the first level cohort and the middle level cohort and any other cohorts that we need. How can we get managers to collaborate at their various levels? Because the more the managers collaborate, the less you need to teach people who are making collaboration. That collaboration will come in the teams if the managers have this overarching purpose, this overarching goal. So flow efficiency at all levels. Yeah, that's all I want. Those are my 2 magic wands. Yeah, that's all.
Hey, you might as well throw world peace in there. Hopefully, well.
Oh, yeah, and an end to world hunger and, maybe getting back together in person. Yeah.
Well, I think some of those are probably easier. I actually think flow efficiency is one of those things that is attainable. Probably much easier than solving world peace. As always, marvelous. How would people continue the conversation?
So everything is on my website, jrothman.com, JROTHMAN.com, because I got my website back when I only needed my first initial and my last name. And all the links to the books are there. I am in the middle of putting the buy links everywhere so that people can choose to buy at the vendor of their choice. And yeah, everything is there.
Super. Johanna Rothman, author of Practical Ways to Manage Yourself, Practical Ways to Lead and Serve Others, Practical Ways to Lead an Innovative Organization, and a boatload more. I suspect that if everyone could see as we were doing this, we had a video up so that if they could see the bookshelf back there, I suspect that any number of those are actually yours. So probably one of the most prolific people I've ever met in my life. It has been absolutely marvelous. Is there anything else that you'd like to promote before we break today?
No, that's it. Thank you.
As always, this is absolutely marvelous, and I look forward to perhaps the next time we meet, you interviewing me. So we shall see. Johanna, thank you again. And have a marvelous 2021.
Tom. Oh, you too.
The Software Process and Measurement Cast is the proud media sponsor of the DevOps Online Summit. Not to put too fine a point on it, the best way to get your message heard is to speak. The crew at the DevOps Online Summit provides a phenomenal platform to network with fellow practitioners from all over the world. Start the journey to speaking at the DevOps Online Summit by submitting your paper and proposal. Link in the show notes. I highly recommend this. In Reread Saturday News, today we take on Chapter 7 of Great Big Agile and OS for Agile Leaders by Jeff Dalton. In 3 more weeks, we'll begin fixing your Scrum, practical solutions to common Scrum problems. Hey, if you haven't bought your copy of both of these books, it's time to do it. Use the link in the show notes. This week in the reread, we tackled the Performance Circle teaming. In the next SPaMCAST, user stories and Tony Timble take center stage. User stories are ubiquitous in Agile. Getting them right is really important. Tony gives us some practical ideas to move the ball forward. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?